In today's video, we are talking Igneous Hammer. I know, better late than never though. And we're going to be talking about a couple things. I want to talk about the best rolls you should be looking for as you grind in the future and perks you should be kind of ignoring on this weapon. I want to talk about my two rolls that I got that I really like and which one I kind of decided on and why. And then lastly, talk about why is Igneous Hammer so good. And it doesn't have to do with just the weapon itself. It also has to do with the weapon it can be paired with. So that's what we're going to be diving into today. So we are going to pop open D2 Foundries. I'm going to pause this right here. Open up this. And when we're looking at the role you should be looking for on this weapon, we want to make sure we have a couple of goals. And the first thing is handling. We want to try to offset the terrible handling on this weapon, because that's going to make the ADS speed feel better, swapping to it feel better, stowing it feel better, all that stuff. And that I feel really ties into why people like certain weapons, is when that handling is nice and high. Again, I think that's why Rose is so popular. And so that is going to make the ideal barrel choice here, fluted barrel with 5 stability and 15 handling. So it really helps us address that lower handling on this weapon. Next, no surprises here, I would recommend ricochet rounds or actually light mag, because that'll also help offset the terrible reload speed. So I think both these are good options. I think a lot of people focus on ricochet and high caliber. I actually think ricochet rounds and light mag are both actually pretty good options. Obviously, you have extended mag if you really value airborne effectiveness. I personally don't, but maybe for those Strand hunters out there, that could be a great option. But I think, again, ricochet rounds with that range and 10 stability for that additional flinch resistance. Now, getting into our third column here, we have a couple of options, and I'm just going to get right to what I think are the top 3, and everything else you can ignore, and that's fragile focus, keep away, and rapid hit. And again, keep away is going to be great and probably the ideal choice for most players, because again, the increased range, and it further addresses that terrible reload speed, which again is great on a weapon with such a low magazine size. I also get that accuracy cone, or narrows the accuracy cone by 5%, which I don't know if I can notice or not. It seems like it, but sometimes I think it's just placebo maybe. And then fragile focus is great because you get that additional 20 range, but no boost to reload speed. And that's where I think fragile focus is a great option if you have like you're a Phidian aspect warlock, where you have the gauntlets to kind of offset that lack of reload that you would get from having keep away. And then of course rapid hit, which is great, but of course you don't get increased range, which is kind of a bummer. So it kind of puts you in a place where everything else on the weapon from a range perspective has to go well, right? Because we want to address the range, or address the handling on this weapon, and we want to try to get as close to 100 range as possible. And so I think rapid hit is great if everything else is good. So if we're max range, we're 90 range, so you're still not going to get 100, but you know, you're going to lose about, I think it's about 2 meters of range there, which isn't the end of the world. But everything else really has to go well for you on this weapon in order for that to happen. So here, I'm just going to choose keep away, because I feel like that's going to be the best for a majority of players. And then we're going to put that on. You see, it brings us up to 90. And then from there, that's where I really recommend in our last column 2 perks, and that's Eye of the Storm and Moving Target. And I think Eye of the Storm is the clear winner here. I think it's especially noticeable when you're trading shots back and forth with another player, and it comes down to that last shot. You're going to really feel Eye of Storm kick in on those last shot or 2, maybe, depending on how much damage you've taken. And it just makes a very big difference. I wasn't always sold on this perk, but man, it is a game changer. Moving Target is another great option, again, because of that additional aim assist. And again, reduces the ADS movement speed penalty just by a little bit, which can be nice for like strafing and stuff, I guess. But I think overall between these two, Eye of the Storm is the winner. A lot of people like Opening Shot. I think Opening Shot's good. I think it's also kind of overrated because it's just for 1 shot. But that being said, if you get it, it's not terrible. It's still better than Incandescent Golden Tricorn, which I thought had some potential, but it's just way too much setup. Or Frenzy, and then Precision Instrument is just not that great on this weapon, honestly. Eye of the Storm really is the play, in my opinion, on this last column. And as far as everything else, if everything goes right here, then you could do with the range masterwork here, or range mod, I should say, adept range, and you're sitting at 100 range, 53 stability, 55 handling, and 63 reload. Oh wait, but if one quiet moment is active, throw that on, we're at 100 reload, which is quite nice and really turns this weapon into just a complete beast. You got 100 range, 100 reload speed. You've addressed the handling. We got great stability for that flinch resistance. And then if Eye of the Storm kicks on, everything just goes crazy on this freaking weapon, as you can see from a stat perspective, which is pretty awesome. Now, we've kind of talked about what our goals are when we're hunting for a weapon. What are some of the best rolls? Now, let me talk about the 2 rolls I got. I'm gonna kind of pull them up here. Let me see if I can make this a touch bigger so we can see. So the 2 rolls I have my first one, which is Hammerforge, Light Mag, Keep Away, and it's Precision Instrument or Golden Tricorn with the Stability Masterwork, or sorry, Range Masterwork, and then I did a Stability mod because this already put me, I think, at 100 range. And I think overall, as you can see from the stats here, pretty good. 100 range, 48 stability, 40 handling, which is not great, but again, I'm running a fitting aspect on Warlock because I do main Warlock. And again, I'm sitting at, I believe, 100 reload also, which is pretty nice. Now, this is the one I was trying to use for a long time, but between Golden Tricorn and Precision Instrument, I was just really feeling like it was a wasted column, and it was kind of just keeping me up at night. Now I do have this other one, which is actually, spoiler alert, my main one, and that's with Fluted, Ricochet, Fragile Focus, so I got that 20 range, but no boost to reload, Eye of the Storm, or Moving Target, which is awesome. So the top 2 perks in that column, in my opinion, with a Stability Masterwork, and then I threw an Adept Range mod, so kind of the inverse from this one. And as you can see, overall, I still can hit 100 range. I get 60 stability, 55 handling before my Fitting aspect, and then 70 reload speed, but with my Fitting, it's actually 100. And so this is where I think Fragile Focus for some of those Affinity Aspect Warlocks can be a great option, especially if you've got great perk options in the last column, because again, you don't need as much of that reload from Keep Away. You can even argue you don't need Fluted as much, but again, I would still go with Fluted just to make that handling as high as possible, because again, I think that just really ties into how the weapon feels overall in its responsiveness. And so overall, these are between my 2, but this is the one I'm going with. But again, that's why I think Keep Away for a majority of players who don't main Warlock, don't main Affinity Aspect. This is where Keep Away really kind of edges out Fragile Focus because of that, especially on a 120. So we've talked about the perks you should be looking for, the perks you should be ignoring. We've talked about kind of my 2 favorite roles and why I've chosen the ones I've chose. But why is Igneous so good? And I think it's because 120s just sit in that really nice range, but are also great dueling weapons overall, especially if you're great playing your cover, because that allows you to peak shot and then compete with some of those more dangerous 140s. And again, just a really engage your opponent from a really comfortable range. And especially with all the range compression changes that kicked in this season, I think again, it just makes it 120s that much better in terms of a range and how far out they can go. Again, we can get up to 40 meters, which is pretty crazy for a 120. But the other thing that I think specifically makes Igneous so good is the fact that it can be paired with conditional finality. As you can see in the gameplay, that's what I'm using. And I think conditional finality being the best shotgun in the game, in my opinion, over any precision shotgun, on top of the ability to combat NTS wards, to counter bubble, to counter well. Obviously, you gotta be able to get in there first. It just makes it so deadly. And even seeing like the announcement that Thorn's gonna get a Callus, I was excited, but then immediately sad because I can't pair it with conditional finality. And I think that really speaks to the potency of conditional finality and its consistency as a shotgun. And so I think that also makes Igneous a really amazing choice. On top of all the perk combinations, on top of the stats you can get on this weapon, it is just so good on its own. And then you layer in the fact that it can be compared with conditional finality. I think it just makes this weapon easily the best 120 and possibly the best hand cannon in the game because of how it can be paired. Obviously, have Ace of Spades, which are really good from an exotic standpoint. Again, not gonna be able to use conditional. Okay, what about something like Sunshot? Can't use it with conditional. And I think that speaks to, again, the strength of that shotgun. So overall, I think Igneous is probably gonna be the hand cannon I'm gonna be maining for a long time, at least until Thorn gets its catalyst. Again, all mainly because of one, how good it is, but also because I compare it with conditional finality. And for all of you that don't have a conditional finality, I'm the last one to tell you to raid. I would definitely recommend getting in there, do some LFG, and get that shotgun, because it's only going to make your Igneous feel that much better, because you're going to have such consistency in that close range, and then Igneous is going to take care of everything else. But let me know in the comments below, what are some of the best Igneuses you got over the past 2 weekends if you weren't getting booted or killed by crazy Amit weapons, your favorite rolls, and what weapon you're actually pairing it with. I'd be curious to see how much of you are pairing Igneous Hammer with conditional, or if you have another go-to that you're really enjoying as well.